Authorities in Texas have arrested a couple, December and Jonathan Mitchell, after a disturbing discovery in their backyard. Investigators say the body of 26-year-old Jonathan Kinman, a man with special needs, was found buried behind his own home. According to police, both his mother and stepfather are now facing serious charges for allegedly trying to hide what happened. A recently unsealed search warrant reveals troubling details about the case, including signs that someone may have attempted to cover up evidence inside the house. From the mother's emotional on-camera remarks to reports of a room that appeared hastily cleared out and carried a strong odor of decay, investigators say the signs were impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, where posts made on social media in the days leading up to the discovery have also drawn concern and are now part of the ongoing investigation. Joining us to help unpack the latest developments is homicide detective Eric Barnes, who will provide insight into how cases like this are investigated and what might happen next. We're looking into a heartbreaking new case out of Texas, one that's left an entire community stunned. Police say a 26-year-old man with special needs was discovered buried in his own backyard. His name was Jonathan Kinman, and investigators believe it was his mother and stepfather who put him there. According to court documents, a newly unsealed search warrant describes what officers uncovered inside that home and what may have really happened before the discovery. One of the most chilling moments reportedly came when police arrived with cadaver dogs. As officers searched the property, Jonathan's mother, December Mitchell, was heard on camera saying, "I did this. This was my decision. I'm sorry. I just wanted him close to me." Even with that statement, there are still so many questions. How long had Jonathan been missing before anyone noticed? Why wasn't his death reported properly? And what exactly happened inside that home before his body was found? Investigators say everything began to unravel on October 14th when officers conducted a welfare check at the family's home on White Oak Lane in Burleson, Texas. Police had been contacted by a family friend after seeing a Facebook post from December claiming that her son had passed away. When officers reached out, she allegedly told them Jonathan had died at a local hospital, but when police checked, no hospital records matched that claim. Later that evening, Jonathan's stepfather, Jonathan Mitchell, called 911, and that's when officers returned with cadaver dogs to search the property. The next day, investigators, assisted by the Texas Rangers, made a tragic discovery: a shallow grave behind the house near a shed. Inside, they found Jonathan's body wrapped in a camouflage blanket. Both December and Jonathan Mitchell were immediately taken into custody and charged with tampering with evidence with intent to conceal a human corpse, a second-degree felony. The Tarrant County Medical Examiner is still waiting on final autopsy results to determine the exact cause of death. Neighbors described the couple as friendly, the kind of people who waved over the fence and hosted weekend gatherings. But strangely, none of them seemed to know that December even had an adult son living there. Jonathan, who had a rare condition known as Russell-Silver syndrome, faced lifelong challenges related to growth and development. His death has left the community searching for answers, and investigators continue to piece together what really happened inside that seemingly quiet suburban home. This one is especially unsettling because it involves a vulnerable adult. And when a family member is the suspected perpetrator, the investigation becomes a different kind of challenge. What stands out right away is that detectives didn't just stumble onto this, they followed a tip. That tells us someone connected to the situation had a moment of conscience and came forward. And having an independent tipster can be crucial for investigators trying to piece together what happened. Another striking detail: neighbors reportedly didn't know a grown son lived at the house. That suggests the family kept a very low profile, and for a person with special needs, that can mean they were isolated or not seen by the community. When the alleged victim can't speak up for themselves, it complicates everything, from the timing of discovery to how evidence is interpreted. Detectives handling cases like this must move carefully. There are obvious signs that raise red flags, but investigators can't let those early impressions rush the process. They have to independently verify every lead and develop evidence that stands up in court. Not rely only on what the parents say, especially since they are currently connected to the investigation. Right now, the pair face charges related to tampering with a body, but that's only what prosecutors have filed so far. The full scope of what happened is still under review. In short, this is a sensitive, complicated case. The presence of a tipster, the apparent isolation of the victim, and the careful work required by detectives are all pieces of a puzzle investigators are still trying to solve. As tragic as this story already is, investigators are being very cautious about how they move forward. Some might wonder why there haven't been any murder or manslaughter charges yet, but experts say it's still too early. At this point, everything depends on the medical examiner's report. The autopsy will be critical in determining how Jonathan died and when. Without that confirmation, investigators can't move ahead with more serious charges. Science will ultimately guide the next steps in this case. Because Jonathan's body was buried, it adds another layer of complexity. Time, environment, and soil conditions can all affect what evidence remains. Forensic teams have to be extremely careful, not just with the body itself, but also with everything surrounding it. Even something as small as soil particles or plant matter can reveal crucial clues about what happened and when. When detectives exhume a body, the entire area, including the ground around it, becomes part of the crime scene. Every inch is carefully examined, photographed, and tested to make sure nothing is overlooked. A single piece of evidence can change the direction of the investigation entirely. Cadaver dogs also played a huge role in this discovery. These highly trained dogs can detect the scent of human remains even from long distances or beneath the surface. In fact, many investigators describe them as one of the most reliable tools in cases like this, capable of locating evidence that might otherwise go unnoticed. And it's remarkable how this case even came to light, all because of a social media post. A simple message online sparked concern, leading a family friend to alert police. It's a reminder of how powerful community awareness can be. In today's digital world, posts, photos, and even small updates can sometimes expose hidden crimes and save lives. This case shows how investigation, science, and community action can all come together to bring the truth to light, even when that truth takes time to uncover. Social media ended up being the unexpected spark that set this entire case in motion. When December Mitchell posted online about her son's supposed death, it caught the attention of someone close to the family, someone who felt uneasy enough to contact police, and that's where everything began to unravel. Once investigators checked the claim that Jonathan had died at a local hospital, they quickly discovered there was no record of any such death. No paperwork, no doctor's report, no cremation order. Nothing. It was a huge red flag. From that moment, detectives knew something wasn't right. When questioned, December reportedly told police she wasn't planning a funeral and claimed Jonathan had been cremated. But without any documents or proof, that story fell apart almost instantly. For investigators, that kind of false narrative is actually useful because it's easy to disprove. With a single phone call to the hospital, officers confirmed the story didn't add up, and that immediately placed her at the center of the investigation. Now, could her reaction have come from shock or confusion? Some might argue that. But detectives with years of experience say that excuse rarely holds up, especially when the actions that follow seem calculated. In this case, it appears the goal may have been to create the illusion that Jonathan had died naturally and that everything had been handled properly. The mention of cremation was especially suspicious. By saying he'd been cremated, she offered a simple explanation for why there was no body, an explanation that prosecutors will likely see as deliberate misdirection. Burying a loved one in a backyard isn't entirely unheard of, but it's extremely rare, and in most cases it points to someone trying to hide the truth rather than follow the law. Investigators believe that detail, combined with the false hospital story, paints a troubling picture of what might have really happened inside that home. By now, investigators seem convinced that something more serious may have happened. All signs point toward possible foul play. What's striking is how this investigation even started. Normally, when parents say their child passed away in a hospital, police might have no reason to doubt them. But this situation was different. That Facebook post caught the attention of people who actually knew the family, people who felt something wasn't right. Those friends and community members began asking questions and sharing their concerns. And that outside pressure is what pushed law enforcement to dig deeper. Once police started verifying the details, The gaps in the story became impossible to ignore. The post alone was suspicious enough, but when combined with calls from people close to the family who hinted that something strange was going on, officers knew they had to check on Jonathan in person. The timeline itself is also very revealing. Later that same evening, Jonathan's stepfather called 911, reportedly telling police that his wife had buried her son in the backyard. According to reports, a family friend had already warned the couple that if they didn't contact police, he would do it himself. That moment likely forced their hand. For detectives, these outside witnesses are invaluable. Each piece of information, from the Facebook post to the friend's warning, helps build a timeline. The longer the delay between each of those moments, the more it may affect what charges could follow. And while both parents are now facing charges related to evidence tampering, it's not uncommon in cases like this for one spouse to claim ignorance. To say, "I didn't know what my partner was doing." Whether that defense holds up depends entirely on what investigators can prove. Given what's been alleged, that a 26-year-old man was buried in his own backyard, it's hard to imagine that something like this could have been done without both people knowing at least part of what was happening. But that's exactly what detectives are trying to determine now. Right. And that's something investigators see all the time. When more than one person is involved in a serious crime, it's common for one of them to start minimizing their role, trying to make their actions seem smaller or less important. That usually creates tension between the two, and detectives can use that separation to their advantage. When the stories start to split, that's when the truth often starts to surface. But there's another disturbing part of this investigation. As police searched the Mitchell's property with cadaver dogs, December Mitchell was reportedly caught on a patrol car camera speaking to her husband. What she said has now become one of the most critical pieces of evidence. According to reports, she was heard saying, "It was all me. That dog was going in to find him." She allegedly went on to tell her husband, "I did this. This was my decision. I'm sorry. I just wanted him close to me." Detectives say those words carry serious weight. Even before any additional evidence is confirmed, a statement like that could directly indicate who had the most involvement. Still, investigators believe there may have been a gap between when Jonathan died and when he was buried. Time that could have allowed both parents to coordinate or change their story. That's why detectives are carefully comparing each of their statements and checking every detail against the physical evidence. And what makes this even more remarkable is that her confession may have been completely unintentional. Investigators call this kind of moment an excited utterance. It happens when someone under extreme stress blurts something out without realizing they're being recorded, usually by a dash cam or body camera. In this case, it sounds like December was overwhelmed, possibly panicked, and felt she had lost control of the situation. In that emotional state, she spoke freely, not realizing every word was being captured. Meanwhile, inside the home, detectives were uncovering even more troubling signs. According to the affidavit, Jonathan's bedroom appeared to have been completely cleared out. His belongings were missing, and investigators immediately noticed something about that empty room that raised even more questions. Inside the home, investigators made a series of disturbing discoveries. According to NBC5, the mattresses in the house showed clear signs, and even smelled, of human decomposition. Detectives collected hair follicles for forensic testing, along with DNA samples connected to Jonathan Mitchell, hoping to build a clearer picture of what really happened inside those walls. When asked about that process, detectives say this approach is exactly by the book. In any suspicious death, investigators begin by treating the scene as a potential homicide. That means gathering every piece of evidence, documenting everything, and ruling nothing out. Only after the forensic results come in can they scale back, if the evidence allows it. But in this case, where a child may have been missing for months before being found buried, every step has to be deliberate. Investigators are moving slowly and methodically, treating each piece of evidence as critical to understanding what happened and when. Still, there's a challenge. If Jonathan's body is too decomposed to clearly determine how he died, then the crime scene itself could become the key to unlocking those answers. Detectives will be looking closely for blood traces, signs of bodily fluids, or anything that suggests a struggle or injury. Even the smallest stain can reveal whether someone suffered a minor wound or something far more violent. All of it helps establish the timeline, the possible cause of death, and whether the crime happened inside that home. And then there's another haunting layer to this story: the social media post that started it all. December Mitchell's Facebook message may have been what first raised alarm, but it wasn't the only post that caught attention. Authorities say Jonathan's stepfather shared his own message before police even arrived for the welfare check. The post, made on October 14th at 6:35 p.m., read simply, "I know you're in a better place, but it still hurts." That single sentence now stands as a chilling timestamp, written just hours before officers uncovered the heartbreaking truth buried in their backyard. Detectives say that one social media post, that short emotional message, might end up being a critical piece of evidence. It reads like a simple expression of grief, the kind anyone might share after losing someone they love. But investigators say it does more than that. It helps them build a timeline, showing when the family first claimed Jonathan had passed and possibly when he was buried. For detectives, a post like that isn't something to ignore. It's a breadcrumb, one that needs to be followed up immediately. Investigators would want to sit down with Jonathan's stepfather, hear his version of events, and find out exactly what he knew and when he knew it. Because online activity, even a single message, can sometimes reveal more than anyone intends to share. But what makes this story even more unsettling is how ordinary everything seemed from the outside. Neighbors described the Mitchells as friendly, normal people who kept up their yard and often hosted gatherings. One neighbor, Betty Noyola, told CBS Texas that the couple would chat over the fence, wave hello, and talk about their daughter and granddaughter, never once mentioning a son. So when police arrived at their door that October evening, no one in the neighborhood could have guessed what was about to unfold. "We never saw a young man living there," Betty said. "They never talked about him. We just assumed it was the two of them and their family." That disconnect, the difference between the life they showed in public and what was allegedly happening inside, is something detectives see far too often. People who appear perfectly normal, even warm and social, sometimes lead a completely different life behind closed doors. According to investigators, it seems that December and Jonathan Mitchell may have gone out of their way to create a new image, one that erased any mention of their son. For neighbors who'd known them for years, learning that truth has been both shocking and heartbreaking. As detectives continued piecing things together, one detail stood out. Jonathan's room had been completely emptied. That discovery, combined with everything else, suggested the couple had already moved past the incident and were trying to start a new chapter as if nothing had happened. If it hadn't been for that tip, the one that sparked the welfare check, this case might have stayed buried forever. Now police are carefully interviewing the neighbors, hoping to fill in the blanks. They're asking questions like, "Did you see anyone moving things late at night? Did you hear anything unusual?" Even small details that once seemed meaningless could now prove critical. Detectives rely on those community voices, the people who lived right next door, because they often hold pieces of the story that connect everything together. Each neighbor's account helps build a clearer picture of what really happened behind that quiet suburban home. And while investigators continue their work, Jonathan's father's side of the family, the Kinmans, are left trying to process the unthinkable. In a statement, they described the situation as a living nightmare, saying they were horrified by the news of their precious Jonathan. They promised full cooperation with law enforcement and said they will fight for every ounce of truth and justice for their son. The community has also spoken out. The Center for ASD in Burleson, which supports individuals with special needs, expressed heartbreak and concern over the tragedy. Although they didn't know Jonathan personally, their message was clear: this never should have happened. They reminded everyone that caring for people with special needs is a lifelong commitment. They pointed out that long wait lists for services and constant funding shortages make life harder for families who already give everything they have. As they put it, our loved ones grow older, and their needs change. They don't just disappear. That message resonated deeply across the city, a reminder that behind every heartbreaking story like this one, There's a system that must do better to protect the most vulnerable. When asked what he would say to Jonathan's family, Detective Barnes took a moment before answering. He explained that speaking with victims' families is one of the hardest parts of any investigation, and that compassion and patience are key. My message to them would be simple, he said. Please just give us time. I want to make sure we get this right, for Jonathan and for you. He added that families in these situations are not only grieving, but often dealing with deep confusion, especially when people they once trusted may be involved. It's heartbreaking, he said quietly, but my promise would be to stay in touch, to make sure they always hear new information from me first, not from the news. It's a reminder that behind every headline, there are people, real families, trying to make sense of something unimaginable. As of now, December and John Mitchell remain in custody at the Johnson County Jail, each held on a $250,000 bond as investigators continue their work to uncover the full truth about what happened to Jonathan Mitchell.